Um, Speaking of coaches, there has been some coaching news. Shout out to Ian Begley, who's also reported that the Knicks are interested in Taylor Jenkins. Hello, hello, hello. Knicks are interested in Taylor Jenkins and also Mike Brown. We will be interviewing those coaches this week. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that, man. What do you guys think of our coaching candidates, Taylor Jenkins and Mike Brown?
The great friend of the channel, Raw Hebrew, on his show last week did a great breakdown of the defensive metrics, both the defensive point differential as well as net rating between Mike Brown and Mike Brown's 4 stints, Cleveland twice, LA, Sacramento. I believe those are the ones he's coached, and then Taylor Jenkins 5 years in Memphis. And that overall, Mike Brown, no matter what roster he had, was kind of in the middle of the pack defensively in both those two metrics, and Taylor Jenkins was like top 5 in both those metrics in ascending order in his time in Memphis. So I agree with Raw, and I think most people on this channel, shockingly, that defense wins championships, and I'm always defense first. So when I look at those metrics, plus the way that Mike Brown has just always been like, when he gets fired, everyone's like, get the hell out of here. Like they're like completely fed up with him. From the ownership, the front office, to the players, they are so happy he's gone once he's gone. Especially most recently with De'Aaron Fox was like, I don't care if you fire him. Enough damage has been done. I want out of here. And still got traded afterwards. So I like the idea of Taylor Jenkins. Maybe it's because we're both born in the cesspool of Arlington, Texas, and somehow survived. Maybe it's because he's only 40 years old and has a sharp, smart young mind, well respected. Maybe it's because up until a month ago, he was considered one of the top 5 young coaches in the NBA.
Yeah.
Before he got fired, if you listed who are the top 5 best young coaches in the NBA, his name was a part of it. No matter who else you wanted to include in that conversation, Taylor Jenkins was one of the 5 best. So if you tell me, as someone who just fired, who was the oldest coach in the NBA, that Taylor Jenkins is going to be available, sign me up. I have been doing my due diligence here in Dallas because he is from Dallas, asking around and trying to contact people who have worked with him in any capacity of basketball, and I have been shut down overwhelmingly. And everyone kind of says the same thing. Not allowed to talk about it. I have been told not to talk about it. It's best if I don't talk about it because they don't want to ruin his chances or say something out of turn, which means the Knicks have done their due diligence. They're talking to the same people that I'm trying to talk to, and it is a very tight-lipped scenario. So I am very, very convinced that Taylor Jenkins is very high on their list of who they want to go after, because I've done the same type of thing to almost every candidate that has been nominated or talked about to be interviewed, and I've gotten the chance to talk to some of those people. So this is the first time I reached out to someone that it was a total shutdown. The only one who I haven't is Jason Kidd. I didn't do any background research on him, but every other candidate I have, and I got some source. I got some responses. Right. Check out Ned's Substat later on this week or next week for some exclusive interviews. But Taylor Jenkins has been complete and utter. What's the terminology? It's a embargo on any type of conversation about him. So that's very interesting to me as a reporter, that if you have any type of media literacy, you can read the tea leaves and say he's definitely number 1 or number 2 candidate right now.
Nice plug, Lee. If you haven't subscribed to that Substack, definitely should check out all the works that Lee is going to do. So I posted it on the community channel, so definitely subscribe to that. All right. Ryan G, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Well, first and foremost, I'm not going to act like I know a lot about Taylor Jenkins and his coaching style and things of that nature, the X's and O's behind, this thought process in games and things of that nature, because I haven't watched the Grizzlies enough to really get a hold on his coaching style and things of that nature. There's only a few things I really know about him from watching a few Grizzlies games. Number one, this is where he's opposite of Thibs, because when he was in Memphis, he wasn't afraid to play his young guys. Like he's like, so I see him as a coach that if the Knicks were to hire him, he would definitely develop the bench, which means the young guys on the bench would definitely get some playing time and have a chance during the season to develop, which is something that Thibs did not do during his time. So I see that as a positive. The other positive is what Lee said. He is a defensive coach. The way the Knicks want to play basketball, the Knicks want to be a defensive team. That's first and foremost. So the fact that Taylor Jenkins leads with that also makes him a prime candidate for the Knicks as well. I think the only concern I have is that because I remember when he was fired and I was on social media and I was going through like a lot of like the tweets of like journalists, like the journalists in Memphis, that cover the team, and they were trying to, break down like his firing and why he was fired and things of that nature. And it seems like the general like media consensus was that Taylor Jenkins deserved his firing. And they listed a bunch of reasons as to why he got fired from the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think part of it had to do with like, like sometimes he seemed clueless during games and things of that nature. I don't remember what exactly I read because that was a while ago that happened, but that's my only concern because it seemed like the media in Memphis were not against his firing. It seemed like they were on board with his firing. So that's the only concern I have. But besides that, if you look at like the basics, like I do like the fact he plays young players. I do like the fact that he's a defensive coach, and to me, I think those are the top two things the Knicks probably need at the moment, like a defensive coach and a guy that is going to play the young guys and develop them. So,
Yeah. It seemed like when he got fired, like they were having big losses at that time. And the thing is like during that time, there was injuries happening. One, there was injuries happening. Two, he was kind of forced to like change this offense from a pick and roll centric offense to more of a, off ball cutting type of offense, which is kind of what we actually kind of want here too. Even though we do want pick and roll at some point, more pick and roll than what he was running. But he went away from that to kind of preserve Ja Morant's body. I don't think he's gonna have to do that here because Jalen Brunson's just more durable. So, although some might say he deserved it, I still feel like there was other circumstances to why he got fired and the timing of his firing with the Grizzlies.
Yeah, he's probably a little salty about his firing because they went away from that offense once front office fired most of the assistants and put new assistants in and installed this new offense, which failed. What he was doing was working, but it was detrimental to Ja. That's their cornerstone right now. So, they made changes. The changes didn't work out. At the end of the season, they were looking bad. They knew that this wasn't going to work, and I guess they just decided to make a change.
Is Ebony in? Oh.
I was going to say that there was a lot of drama in Memphis, even beyond Taylor Jenkins, that I think you need to add context to the decision making to really understand that not this season, but the season prior, toward the end of that one, the general manager and ownership fired 5 of Taylor Jenkins' assistants. Which, if you think about that, that's a really big number. Like, imagine all of Tibbs's yes men, all those bums on the bench who you don't even know what they do. If all those guys are fired, that would place a lot of pressure on Tom Thibodeau, and it would probably make him feel a little ostracized and was back against the wall. And not only that, then they told Taylor Jenkins, as Fritz alluded to revamp the entire offense, which was a very heavy pick and roll offense. It made sense. You got John Morant and JJJ, 2 guys who can pick and pop, 2 guys who can cut, 2 guys who can shoot. They were very pick and roll heavy. It became very much of a off ball cutting, very little screen setting. I think they finished dead last in the NBA in ball screens. There's a lot of motion and a lot of shooting, which didn't necessarily benefit John Morant's very heavy ISO ball handling style, similar to Jalen Brunson. So I think the season was a huge disappointment, but he was kind of set up to fail because the type of offense that his new assistants had great hand in implementing was undercut by Jenkins not wanting to run that offense and the star player not liking the results of that offense because it took the ball out of his hands and made him more off ball. So it was a combustible situation that led to the firing of Jenkins and the trading of Desmond Bane, all to appease John Morant and JJJ, which again solidifies why this is not a fire sale. This is a soft rebuild and retooling around Ja and JJJ, with now the coach who was majorly responsible for that institution of new offense to then re-implement ball screens and pick and roll offense back into Memphis for John Morant to be more on board. But I think all of that is very important in understanding why Taylor Jenkins was fired. It wasn't like a personality dispute, or he didn't mess up or it choked or not have the right rotations or play someone in a playoff series. He was undercut. by behind the scenes with the front office. The writing was on the wall from the moment the season started. Very similar, I think, to what we could be made about why Tibbs was fired.
All great points. Yeah, all great points. So I'm with it. I'm with Taylor Jenkins for sure. Top 5 offense, top 6 defense. I'm with. And then when you subsequently kind of look at Mike Brown, like he has a 61% win percentage, but then you kind of, I feel like whenever you're coaching LeBron James, I don't really ever know how much credit to give you because LeBron James is pretty much the damn coach on the floor himself. So you're like, all right, cool. Then when you take into account the other stops he goes to, and you say, all right, okay, cool. He doesn't have LeBron James here. How does he fare here? Yeah, then it starts to get a little bit murky. I mean, he did restore the Sacramento Kings from the start of the season, where they didn't make the playoffs in 17 years, and then he got into the playoffs. So you got to mention that. But then, like Lee said, they've been all middle of the road defensive teams his entire career. So, I mean, he has the winning percentage, yes, but I don't know. I still have questions when it comes to Mike Brown for sure, especially the way he's been fired in different stops.
Yes, I know I made fun of Mike Brown a lot, and he's probably the second worst choice that I would say after Mark Jackson. I think Mark Jackson's absolutely the worst choice, and any old head, you know where to find me on Twitter. Please at me. Let's argue. More than happy to do so about why I think Mark Jackson's a horrible option. Number 2 is Mike Brown, but I do want to give Mike Brown some flowers. Mike Brown is an excellent offensive coach. Where he lacks defensively, he has learned and absorbed a lot during his time as a lead assistant for Steve Kerr and Golden State Warriors. And he brought the action that I've talked about, the Tibbs use for Josh Hart, that Kerr uses for Draymond Green, that elbow playmaking action. He turned Domantas Sabonis into the best version of himself offensively as a small ball 5. He moved Sabonis to the 5 and really implemented a heavy DHO offense with him and Fox that at times looked unbeatable until the playoffs. So rotations and adjustments, that's where Mike Brown has always had criticism, is not fully utilizing his roster. There were inconsistencies with Keon Ellis's role in and out of the starting lineup, in and out of the rotation. These are issues that plagued Mike Brown from his entire journey, starting with the head coaching job in Cleveland, not using his full roster, not trusting young players. But he is an excellent offensive coach and one of the early purveyors of checking a bunch of threes and shooting a wide volume of threes across the board, 1 through 5. I think he would unlock a lot between Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, which is why I'm an advocate as a potential leader on the bench. Yeah. More than happy with that because I think we would fully utilize our entire roster with him offensively.
I agree. Mike as an assistant and kind of leaning into even more of Cat's passing ability, I feel like would do wonders for us. If he wants to take on that type of role, that's totally up to him. I feel like he might have to rebuild his reputation after what's been happening with the Kings. Personally, I don't know if he sees it that way. But that's the way I see it because I feel like that what happened with the Kings kind of made him look crazy. Personally.